Good afternoon. I'm Dan Pinault from Cycle Capital, a Cleantech venture fund. Today I'm going to be talking about the resurgence of cleantech venture investing and ways that we can accelerate disruptive technologies that have meaningful impact on climate change. Despite the efforts of many, global carbon emissions went up last year. There's a lot of positive trends, such as the proliferation of solar and wind deployments, as well as electric vehicles, but there's a clear need for breakthrough technologies if we want to have any hope of limiting global temperature rise to less than 2 degrees centigrade. From a venture investing standpoint, there is good news. Last year, there was $9 billion invested by venture and private equity firms in clean technologies. So the question is, what's driving this surge in capital? There are several key factors. First and foremost, unless you've got your head in the sand or don't believe in real science, most people acknowledge that climate change is real and it's a problem. And this wasn't the case 10 years ago. The result has been a surge of dollars by progressive institutional investors, by large strategics like utilities and oil and gas, as well as government entities. The second is that people have become much more informed on how to impact carbon emissions. And this has resulted in a much larger investable universe for clean tech companies. In the past, technology focus in clean tech areas were around solar thin film, biofuels, and areas like this. And today there's a much wider range. For example, the fund that I work for invests in both hardware and software. And there's really 5 technology buckets that were focused around areas that we believe has a significant impact on carbon emissions. This is clean power, sustainable agriculture, industrial IoT, clean transportation, and smart cities. And the third is that for those traditional clean tech investments that are by nature capital intensive or have manufacturing-based business models, venture investors now better understand the sector, and they've adapted to those challenges in front of them, which is what I'd like to talk about. So in summary, capital is becoming more available, there are more areas to invest it in, and investors better understand the sector. All that said, I truly believe that the most meaningful impacts are going to come from those traditional clean tech sectors that are, as I said, capital intensive, are difficult to scale up, and have customers like utilities and regulators to deal with. So I'd like to talk about three ways that I think can help accelerate these types of companies and draw on a couple examples from our portfolio companies. The first is getting in front of the customer. This sounds very simple, but it's not. In the regulated world, such as utilities, they typically run competitive public processes where, in theory, the best company or technology should win. In reality, it's not always the case. If the evaluator is not as familiar with those new disruptive technologies compared to the status quo, they won't be able to ask the pertinent questions in a way that allows an apples-to-apples comparison. So the companies that we've seen that have been very successful in this space have actually brought on people that are familiar with the utility space, that talk the language, know how they work, and that can work with them. And I think a great example of this is long-duration batteries. There's a huge need for long-duration energy storage because of the solar and wind deployments that are there today. And lithium-ion batteries, which are the most well-known and fastest-growing batteries, like the ones you have in your laptops or your cell phones, is actually getting selected for some of these long-duration applications. But they're actually much better suited for short-duration applications. So the question is, why is this? Some of it is because, of course, they're farther ahead in the cost curve. But the other key factor is because the evaluation process is set up around lithium-ion batteries. One of our portfolio companies, ESS, which is a manufacturer of iron-sodium hybrid flow batteries, has a technology that is very well suited for long-duration storage. And they recognized this problem early on. So what they did is they brought on people that are very familiar with utilities, knows how to work with them, and got in front of the utilities to inform them of the benefits. Again, this sounds very simple, but to actually get the benefits across the utility that were focused around lower life cycle costs, limited fire risk, non-hazardous materials, allowed them to develop a really big pipeline. So they've done that very well. The second area I'd like to mention is partnering with strategics. Again, sounds simple on the surface, but it's not an easy thing to do. Having a strategic investor invest in your fund means you've got to strategically align the founders, the financials, and the strategics so that they're all on the same page. A great example of this is one of our portfolio companies called Enerchem. Enerchem is a company that has a disruptive technology that converts municipal local solid waste, in other words, garbage, into cellulosic, methanol, ethanol, and other renewable chemicals. they recently partnered with a large oil and gas major, Suncor, who invested $50 million into them, but more importantly, provided them with technical expertise and know-how. So Suncor is one of the largest world-class operators of large chemical processing plants, provided actual personnel and expertise for the Edmonton facility, which is the one-of-its-kind facility in the world. And the results have been game-changing for that company. And finally, the third area I'd like to mention is on the financing front at the project level. I don't think the fundamentals here have really changed. The companies we've seen that are most successful are the ones that work with insurance, as well as engineering, procurement contractors early on, in order to make sure that when they do eventually develop their technology, that it is financeable. However, there's a couple of really interesting market developments, which is really helpful for those companies. There's been a big ad for project finance, so there's a big surge in that finance availability. Some VC firms are actually now raising project finance funds alongside their venture funds. Other infrastructure or project finance funds are actually partnering with VCs or launching their own VCs in order to take advantage of some of those new technologies and build out their portfolio. And so what are the key drivers of this? There's really a surplus of capital availability for infrastructure funds. And especially in the renewable energy space, it's gotten very competitive and returns are getting bid down. So as a result of this, they're looking to get creative and find different ways to generate those returns. And that's a great position to be in for those technology companies, because now these financiers are willing to take more risk and find those niche opportunities. The second point and final point I'll make is that over the past decade, companies and financiers have gotten much more creative around the models that they've developed. So whether it's joint venture agreements, license models, build-to-own, operate, and transfer models, or contract manufacturing models, the bottom line is that there's simply much more options out there for clean tech companies. And if there's a strong offering, I truly believe that it should get funded. So with that, I hope I've left you with a very positive view on the space. Despite the challenges ahead, we're at an inflection point, particularly in Canada, where we've been seeding leading research institutions and seeding companies. With the surge of capital availability, we're at a great position to see these companies through. So thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the talk.